Hello, this is Madman Restorations, and welcome to my first restoration video. In this video, I will be restoring a 1960s Lane Acclaim end table. The Acclaim series by Lane is a very common piece of mid-century modern furniture, which makes it a great first project. As you can see, there's very little finish left on this piece, and needs a complete restoration. Because the remaining finish is so brittle, I went straight to my scraper instead of using wood stripper. In most cases, I try to avoid using stripper because I find it so inconsistent and so messy to deal with. So when finish is in this condition, using the scraper is definitely the best option. I have restored dozens of Lane Acclaim pieces in particular, and removing the finish on the legs is always the most tedious part. And that little bit of finish left on the bottom, between the bottom of the shelf and the leg, I usually remove with a utility knife blade. Next step is sanding. I like to use my random orbital sander with the 150 grit sandpaper to start. I make sure to keep the sander moving because if I keep it in one place too long, it will burn through the veneer. When I am done using my sander, I like to sand by hand with 150 grit sandpaper in direction of the grain to make sure to remove any swirl marks that may have happened. Now that I'm done sanding, I like to wipe the piece with acetone for two reasons. One, to remove all the dust that occurred from sanding, and two, to get a look of what the grain looks like underneath. What I'm looking for is even color and any defects that may be in the veneer. And as you can see, there's a dark watermark that is more prevalent now from sanding. To remove the watermarks, I mix powder oxalic acid with about a cup and a half of warm water. I put as much powder oxalic acid in until it is completely dissolved. Then I wipe the piece in the direction of the grain using a shop towel, making sure to cover the entire area. Because oxalic acid is wood bleach, if you were to use it on the dark areas only, it will just lighten those areas. And then when you're going to refinish and add color, it won't come out even. So it's important to cover the entire piece. Now that the entire area is covered, you have to let it completely dry on its own. And as you can see in this time lapse, you can see the dark spots start to lighten. Now that the oxalic acid is completely dry, I like to wipe with mineral spirits to neutralize it and also to get a look of what the grain and veneer look like. Mineral spirits does not flash as quickly as acetone, which is why I like to use it during this step. You can still see there is that one little dark spot in the middle of the table. I did not want to use oxalic acid again to lighten the wood even more, because I know with my coloring process that that dark spot would be unnoticeable, so I decided to move on. Now it's time for vinyl sealer. This part is actually pretty simple. I use about 70% vinyl sealer, 30% lacquer thinner, and just a splash of retarder. This 30 to 70% ratio with a splash of blush retarder is actually the same ratio you use when you are mixing your clear coats of lacquer as well. Now that my sealer is mixed, it's time to spray with my HVLP sprayer. I like to spray the sides of the table first, and then I go over the top. One of the great benefits of lacquer is its fast drying times. I like to scuff with 320 grit sandpaper in between each coat of vinyl sealer, and then I lay about 2 to 3 total coats of vinyl sealer, scuffing in between each coat in the direction of the grain. Next, I like to use raw umber glaze. This gives a nice subtle effect to the wood, but also gives it a lot of depth as well. To apply, I like to use a 3-inch brush and use a nice heavy coat of glaze on top of the piece. When you are done applying the glaze, you need to let it sit. Depending on the weather, it can take 20 minutes to 40 minutes before the glaze starts to dry. You will know the glaze is ready when it starts to haze, kind of like wax when you're waxing your car. And when the glaze is dry, I like to wipe with a shop towel or a clean rag. You don't want to buff the glaze off, you simply want to wipe the excess off. When you're done wiping off the glaze, you need to let it sit for at least 30 minutes to dry. And when the glaze is dry, you will see the subtle but noticeable difference it makes, giving the piece some depth. And now it's time for toner. When I refinish laying Acclaim, I like to start with Perfect Brown Toner by Mohawk. I like to tone the legs first because I want to get the color on the legs to match as close as I can to the light ash color on the top. Each piece is unique, but I try my best to mimic the original color on Lane Acclaim. Using spray toner is not like using traditional spray paint. You have to be very careful that you are misting the color on, that it is not too heavy. After using Perfect Brown Toner, I like to use Ultra Classic Amber Toner. I like to spray a few coats of this to give the piece a nice aged amber look. Last but not least is the lacquer top coats. I use the same ratio when mixing lacquer as my vinyl sealer, and for Acclaim I like to keep it original and use a gloss sheen lacquer. I like to spray 3, maybe 4 coats of lacquer, making sure to scuff with 320 grit sandpaper or even a green Scotch-Brite pad in between each coat. And here it is, all done. Please follow my Instagram for more mid-century modern restorations, and let me know if you want to see more furniture videos.